Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another week of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and this week I have Sarah Centrella. She's the author of the #1 best-selling self-help book, Hustle, Believe, Receive, an 8-step plan to changing your life and living your dreams. She is also a master life coach who's worked with professional athletes, NBA and NFL players, coaches and wives, and people from around the world, helping them live their dreams. She has been featured on ABC News, Steve Harvey Show, The New York Times, Yahoo News, Good Morning America, and so many more. So I have been so excited to have Sarah on the podcast. Not only is she one badass woman, she has also just the kind of woman that is standing to empower other women. And I just love, I don't feel like there's enough women who are leading the way. And I love that she has totally stepped up and stepped into this role. And so I admire all of her work. And I heard her on the podcast with Ed Milet. He is a very successful entrepreneur, and he had her on his podcast. And I knew I had to have her on. So today we are talking all about a little bit about her journey and how this all started with her marriage breaking up. And she goes into detail with that. And then she talks about her book, and we talk about there's 8 different steps and what those 8 different steps are, which she has said time and time again for her, they are completely proven to work, completely. And that women that she has coached that have done vision boards or future boards have been able to manifest what they have on those boards anywhere between 12 to 18 months, which I think is just amazing. It's amazing. So she talks all about how to create that vision board, but not only that, like how to really dream big and to really own that dream, and how to visualize it and hustle to there's got to be action to get that dream out there and to create it and finally to just live it. And it's just an amazing book, and I love her, and she's so real and down to earth. And when you read her book, it's like she's gone through so many things that the average person would have been knocked down and been like, I can't do this. I can't. This is like too much. I'm not sure what the next step is going to be. And she was able to get out of it. And she has an amazing, amazing life story. So we also talked about how she was able to manifest all these things and what's also currently on her vision boards now. And she also just had, she moved into a new office space, and she has them all hanging up there, which is really cool. I have mine in my living room, and we did discuss how it could be a little, it's like people that may not know you, or they come into your space for the first time, and they kind of look at your vision board, and it's like your heart on a sleeve. Like, these are the things that I want in my life. And it's like in picture form. You know what I mean? And so she says it's a little like she was able to tell us some of the things that are on her current board. And she said that one of the best ways to manifest something is to like say it out loud. And she's like, this is the first time that I'm actually saying this. live on a podcast. And so she did. She spoke her dreams and her desires, and it was amazing. And I hope you love this conversation and follow her advice and get her book. And on to the show. My special guest is Sarah Centrella. I am so happy you're here today, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Margaret. I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yes, I've been waiting for us to have this conversation, and it's just been, once I heard you on Ed Milet's podcast, and you were talking about your book, and I just thought I need to have her on. So thank you so much. So I wanted to just let the audience know that your new book, it's called Hustle, Believe, Receive, an 8-step plan to changing your life and living your dream. I love that title. It just so resonates with me. And I love so many things that you talk about in the book and some of the things that I do currently. So some of the stuff, it definitely works.
Yes, it does.
I wanted you to just share a little bit, just to kind of give us a little background story about your life and sort of what led up to this, maybe, and just, I know that it's long, but, sort of a succinct and what happened, what sort of
Absolutely.
kicked this whole thing off.
Absolutely. It's kind of hard to talk about the book or really anything that I have been doing now without giving a little bit of background on my story, because it really was the catalyst that is the reason why we're here today. So I'm sure your listeners can relate to having gone through some dark time. I think, most of us being human have been through a dark time in our life. And definitely that was the start of my story. So I had been married to my high school sweetheart for 8 years. And this was back in 2008. It's all starting to run together now. And he came home from work one day, and I had been making dinner, and I had twins. My twins were just a little over a year old, and my son was about 5.5. And, we sat down for dinner, kind of did the same thing we'd always been doing. And all of a sudden, I just had this really out of the blue, total gut feeling that was like, go check his phone. And it was a very odd sensation for me, because I had never, was never like the jealous type. I'd never looked at his phone. It just wasn't even, in my consciousness. And especially back then, when like people were barely texting and there was no social media or anything like that. But it was just this like out of body, like, feeling. And he happened to be in the shower at the time. And I went in and found his phone and opened it up. And the very first thing I saw when I opened it was a text message. And it basically said, "I can't wait till you're finally free and all mine, no more sharing." And it was a moment that absolutely instantly changed my life. Instantly. Yeah. I literally went in and, put a movie on for my son so that, he'd be in the other room, and just walked back in the shower, turned the water off, and said, "Get the fuck out and don't come back." And he left within about 5 minutes. And that was the end of my life at that point. And, people ask me all the time, like, how can that be? How can, a 16-year relationship, an 8-year marriage, 3 kids, how does it end in 5 minutes? And all I can say is it absolutely did. I filed for divorce later that week, and just was in this position of going, what do you do now? You know what I mean? And like I said a minute ago, if people have ever been through a traumatic situation or a dark time, I think that is one of the main predominant thoughts of like, how do I move forward? If you've never planned for anything other than the life you're living, and you know what that next day is going to look like, and the next week, the next year, whatever. And then all of a sudden, just the whole thing is turned on its head. It's like, well, now what do I do? Like, how do I get a job? At that point, as a stay-at-home mom. So, and it was in the worst recession that we'd had in years. And just everything had already been bad. We lost our house the year before, and we were living paycheck to paycheck. And so it was the darkest time in my life for a lot of reasons, not not just, that was kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. And I just remember, just laying on the floor and crying for hours and hours and hours, and intermixed with this thought of like, I can't do this. What do I do? How do I, get up tomorrow, whatever. There was also this tiny, like, little bit of hope, for lack of a better word, and I think we all have it. My mom used to call it like the still small voice, or some people call it God, whatever. But I think in all moments, but especially in traumatic and scary and sad, whatever moments, there is that voice that is there to guide us and to tell us, that things are going to be okay. And it's up to us if we hear it or not. And thank God, it somehow started to kind of get through to me. And I just remember thinking, like, what if I could build something totally different, like totally different? And that was kind of the catalyst, or the start to my change, if you will. And, as I started picking up my life and trying to find a job and all of that, and moving and selling everything we owned and just going through all that stuff, the thought of, well, since I have to start over, why don't I just blow the whole thing up and just go, crazy? Why don't I just go for the shoot for the stars type thing? And it started for me really with a vision board, and my very first vision board at work. And that was where I started to allow myself to dream and to imagine a different life. And when I say a different life, I mean, there wasn't one speck of resemblance on my vision board to what my current life was. It was like the most far-fetched thing you can possibly imagine. But that was really the thing that allowed my life to change.
Wow. So when I read going through the book, I also read about the part with the water in your home and that whole thing happening. And so had you sort of already gotten back on your feet and then that happened? Because I'd love to hear that story, which actually brought me to tears as I'm reading this. And I thought, how does someone go through already this whole thing and then get to a place of like somewhat stability, and then this happens?
And it all falls apart again. And I think, looking back, and there's been different kind of iterations of that throughout my life. And I think a lot of your listeners can probably relate too. You start to feel like, okay, I'm getting back on my feet. And, once I'd taken my vision board to work, about a year and a half later, I was, slowly starting to get promoted, starting to get on my feet, starting to get a job that I was really proud of, physically starting to feel better as far as, like working out, looking good, you know what I mean? Just like really starting to feel like, okay, I'm kind of getting my shit together. Like, I'm going to be okay. And not only that, like my vision board had started coming to life, like literally coming to life. And there's so many stories that talk about it in the book. But that very first vision board, I'd say like 95% of it has come to life over the last 7 years. And a ton of it came to life within the first 18 months. So, I went from literally not a dollar to my name and living on food stamps to, all expense paid week in New York. And, like this crazy alternate life that I literally had just been dreaming about. And so, about 2 years had gone by, and I was feeling, pretty good. I took a new job, got a promotion. I was like, okay, this is great. And then in 2 weeks, the whole thing blew up again. And I lost that job suddenly. And literally the next day, my home flooded. And I found myself, with 10 firemen in my house and the Red Cross at my house, and just looking around going, oh my God, like my life just blew up again, and this was a new place. I'd finally moved the kids out of our tiny little apartment. We got a nice little place. And, and I just remember the Red Cross chief coming up to me and just saying, hey, do you have any place to go tonight? And I was like, oh my God, I don't, and I was still, financially struggling, if you will, even though things had gotten better. It definitely wasn't at a place where I was like, oh yeah, I got a bunch of money in the bank. And I remember him just giving me a hug and just saying, hey, we got you, like we'll get a hotel for you, and here's some toys for the kids and here's some clothes for them. And it was such a a humbling, but grateful moment. And I'm telling you, everybody talks a lot about gratitude, but there is nothing like true gratitude. And you don't ever want to have your entire world implode before you feel it. Let me just say that, because if you can avoid that happening, that's a good idea. But I've never been so grateful in my whole life as it was, and we're in this little tiny roadside motel. And it's funny, someone just texted me yesterday, because the Red Cross actually a year later wound up choosing my family as national spokespeople. And so there's a television ad that airs on like 32 cable channels, and it still plays, and it's been like 6 years or something.
Wow.
But the funny part about that story is that, I mean, there's two huge lessons that I learned. One was anything can change in a moment, in a good way or a bad way. And so we have to kind of look at what our initial dream was, where we wanted to go, and then see that whatever is happening to us in our life, even if it feels like, I call them earthquake moments, because it feels like an earthquake, like your whole world is just being destroyed. If you are clear on where you want to go, chances are, and every single time this has been true for me, that imploding of my life for that little bit has wound up being the hugest blessing in disguise, has wound up being truly what got me to the next level of my life. And the funny part about that story is that I had just put on my vision board that I wanted to be a speaker, and I'd never given a speech before. And I was, still keeping my story very private at the time, but I had put it out on my board that, no, this is what I wanted to eventually do. So then to a year and a half later, be chosen by the Red Cross and have a national campaign. And I've spoken at many of their, my very first speech I ever gave was at the Red Cross's annual fundraiser. So it was absolutely a catalyst to the next, phase of my journey. And was something I absolutely had to go through. So learning that and knowing that has got me through so many difficult situations since, that I never would have been able to navigate before I knew these tools that I talk about in the book, that have truly saved my life, because they are what keep me from quitting when things go belly up. And I'm always very honest about that. Like, we're going to go through times that's what it feels like. But if you don't quit, and if you use the tools to get you through it, you're going to find out it was really meant for you, because you had to go through it to get to the next level.
Right.
So for me, that's very encouraging.
Now, tell me, because I don't know if I couldn't find like the next story. What happened after the house got flooded, and then Red Cross helped you, and you were staying somewhere else? How did you get back on your feet again? Like, what was the next chapter to that?
Yeah, so it took about a month for our house to be repaired to the point where we could go back. So we literally, the kids and I, stayed in this tiny little roadside motel for a month. I took, my son to school every morning in it. There's no kitchen, no nothing. Like, I was like couponing, At the same point, I didn't have a job, right? Because I had just been let go from my job. So I didn't have an income coming in. And so it took me about 2 months to get the next job. And that is what actually, I had to relocate for the next job. So we moved to Seattle from Portland, and we were there for just a little under 2 years. And it, wasn't something I necessarily wanted to do, but it's, you got to do what you got to do. And that was, again, it's something that was really, really good for me, because it allowed me to just focus on just my family, just my career, and just writing. And that was a time that I was really learning kind of a lot of what I teach now, and realizing, okay, that is a true dream. I will work corporate as long as I have to, until I can step away and do this for real, full time, which I did last year. So dreams do come true.
They do. Yes. Well, it's such an amazing story. And I was so curious to know what happened after the flood, and how what happened with the house. So yeah. And the fact that the Red Cross was there is amazing as well. What a beautiful resource.
I will be like their forever lifetime champion, let me tell you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book, and you talk about different things throughout the book. Dream it, think it,
Mhm.
say it, write it. And so we don't have to go through all of them, but let's pick a
Sure.
couple that you feel are really potent and things that maybe some of the listeners can start doing and
Yeah.
just start being able to create and write down their dreams or something they want to create in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book it has 8 steps, and they are all very easy to remember. They're dream it, think it, say it, do it. Um, because I wanted something that made sense to regular people. And to be honest, I'm not a big self-helpy person at all. I think I've read like one self-help book in my entire life. So I knew that these concepts they're not revolutionary. So if you've read other self-help books, you've heard about these different concepts in different places. But I think what makes this work so well and resonate with so many people is that one, they're all 8 steps together like a recipe. It's literally a recipe. I give you the homework, like follow it, rinse and repeat, and it's going to work every time. I've been coaching people for it for many years now, and I follow it on a daily basis and have proven it out. So I can say with absolute confidence, if you follow it, it will work for you. And the other thing is I really wanted to teach some of these concepts in a way that regular people could get it, to be honest with you. Like, I kind
Mm-hmm.
of call it for dummies, because when I did try to pick up, a book on manifesting or a book on the law of attraction or whatever, I couldn't understand half the crap, to be honest with you. I was just like, oh my God, I have like, 3 little kids. I'm trying to do my, have a career. I have so much on my brain. I can't freaking figure out what the hell you're trying to say. Like, just speak to me in real
Right.
language.
Right.
So that's really what it is. And I think that's why people resonate with it so much, is because it's easy to understand and very easy to apply in your own life. So the very first step, I think, is such an important one, which is dream it. And it's really the basis for anything you want to do in your life, whether you're trying to change your entire life. And the book subtitle is, the 8 steps to changing your life and living your dreams. So what I love about it is you can apply the 8 steps to completely overhaul your entire life, but you can also apply all 8 steps to one specific goal or dream you have, to have it come to fruition. So, for example, when it came to the whole life overhaul, that's really when I did my first vision board, and I just started dreaming, right? I thought, I want to travel with my kids. I want to be able to take, my son to football games and NBA games, and I want to fly on a private jet, and I want to do all this stuff. So I started putting the dreams out there of what my future life would look like. And then I've also used it for really specific things. Like, I literally used the 8 steps to get a traditionally published book deal. And I have all that documented on YouTube and stuff, because I wanted to say, like, okay, does it work to do something as insane and almost impossible as getting an agent and getting a traditional book deal as a non-published writer,
Right.
and it did. And I also used it to run a marathon, and I'm not a runner, and I hated every second of it, but I did it and it worked. So dream it, I think, is such a key, because if you don't know where you're going, you are never going to get there. But also, if by chance you happen to get somewhere close, you're not even going to know that you're there, right? So having a very clear dream and vision, whether it's specific or about your whole life, is the key to success, because that dream is what keeps you from quitting when things fall apart. And in both the scenarios that I talked about earlier, about when things went really, really bad, the thing that kept me from just losing it, honestly, was that I had spent so much time focused on the life I wanted to build and the dream of what that would feel like, that when I looked at, okay, my option is to give up and settle for always living paycheck to paycheck and not doing anything I want to do in my life, or this insane, awesome, ridiculous life, I think I'll, take the chance of going for this big one. So, and that's where a lot of people quit, is because it isn't strong enough. That dream isn't strong enough. So I think that one's super, super important.
Yeah, I don't think that people that they're not really dreaming big enough, and even Because I think that they'll say like, oh yeah, well, no, I can't ever get that. It's like a quick, like the mind has a way of like, oh no, 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 you can't, come on, you can't have something like
Right.
that. And it quickly like shuts down the dream, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we have, I always think of it as like two little devils or two little bitches on your shoulder who's like, one's the good one who's like, no, 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 you can go for it, da da da, follow, and it's reminding you of all the different tools you have to make it happen. And the other one is just like negative Nelly. It's arguing with you the whole time. It's like, no, 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 So the second step in the book is think it, and it really teaches you how to silence that voice. And that to me changed everything in my life, because it's one thing to have the dream, but it's another thing to be able to know how to shut down that critic and shut down the one who's trying to sabotage your dream. And most people don't know how to do that. And I didn't before I learned, and so I'm all about giving really tangible, easy tools. And that chapter has 3 very basic, simple tools that you use to change your thoughts permanently, because those change your underlying beliefs, which changes your outcomes. And so that was kind of one of those things for me where I was like, everyone's saying think positive, but shit, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
How do you do that? And so that really talks about how. And then the other one that I think is really important is do it. And that's where the word hustle comes in. So for me, it's not about just dreaming. And that's kind of where I differ a little bit from traditional law of attraction stuff. I believe absolutely you have to be ready to get out there and work your butt off. You have got to put in the work to match the dream. And then there is that part of manifesting or attraction that fills the gap for you, which is a beautiful thing, because it's what takes care of how.
Right.
But we have to put in the work every
Totally.
day. Even if we don't know exactly if we're doing the right thing, or we don't know, we might even be like throwing spaghetti at the wall. We're not exactly sure what to do. But guess what? The more work you do, the clearer you're going to get. And the more your dream is going to be, solidified. So I say when when I get to that chapter, I'm like, okay, I know you've been dreading this chapter because no one wants to do the work. But honestly, if you're a control freak like me, it feels awesome to know what to do. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, super important, is being able to put some control in your own hands and say, here's what I can do to make this happen. And that feels really good.
Right, right, right. Now, what were some of you were working then, and so for someone else. And so have you transitioned into just working for yourself now, or do you still work for someone else, or what's happening
I am so
currently?
happy to say that I just work for myself. So
Oh,
I took
good.
that big leap last year. February was my 1 year anniversary as an entrepreneur. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It was definitely terrifying. And I think anyone can relate who's quit a job to, start something or build something that seems insane, really. Because if you look at a corporate job with all the benefits and the 6-figure plus income, and then you look at it like 0 benefits and zero solid income, and you're a single mom and you have 3 kids, it's like, okay, literally everyone looks at you like you've lost your freaking mind. But I believe that all of us who pay attention in our lives, we have our own lottery ticket. We have our one thing that we can bring to this world that is different than anybody else has. And we have our one gift or our one purpose, whatever you want to call it. And for me, this is it. And so I knew that if, for a long time, I did the double hustle. I pretty much worked around the clock. I did a corporate job, raised my kids. When they were asleep, I did this. And at a certain point, you have to make a decision. You can't be fully in on either scenario until you take that risk. And so the first year was tough. It was definitely a huge adjustment. It was really tough. But once I hit that year mark, which I knew, I was like, once I just got to hit that year mark. And then, then it just blew up. So encouragement to all of you entrepreneurs out there, just know that it's going to be tough, be prepared for it, and just say, guess what? It's still going to be worth it. So you're not going to knock me off this road.
Yeah, congrats on being on your own now. I've been there where I've had, the golden handcuffs and then also my own private practice and trying to do both. And it's, when you become so tired and all of your energy is going toward, that job that's paying you, and you have less energy to give to the thing that you love and the thing that you're trying to build, that something has to shift, or else it just, your baby won't grow.
Completely. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, once I get my little dream successful, once I know it can support me, then I'll walk away. The truth is that's probably not going to happen, because it's not ever going to reach its potential success until you are giving it 200%. And as long as you have a job, you're probably giving it 50% at the most.
Yeah.
You just can't, it's physically impossible to be completely, and there's so many things that really hold you in a tiny box, so when I was in a corporate world, I couldn't do anything during working hours at all. I couldn't do any blogging. I couldn't do any social media, all of that had so much censorship on it because of what I was able to do while holding down a job. And it's like, once that lifted, then of course the level of success is going to be totally different. So I think for anyone who's out there, and I get so many messages and letters and stuff from people who are like, oh, that's so cool that you did it. I want to do that, but I don't think I can. You're never going to do it if you have that attitude. There's always going to be time. It's never going to feel like a perfect time to walk away. It's always going to be fucking scary.
Always.
But it's the people who are winners are the people who do it regardless of the fact that it was terrifying, and also have that commitment to realize, like, I'm not quitting until it's successful, period. End of story. End of story. Like, put me out on the street. Cool. I'll be on the street for a month and I'll figure it out, like, whatever. I'm not quitting. So if you go into it with that attitude, you can't not be successful eventually. And that, to me, is what, there's 50 stories of the people I interviewed in the book that aren't just mine, because I wanted to share other people's stories, and they're regular people. Some are athletes and stuff, but a lot of them are regular people. And I just wanted to show what that looks like for other people. It looks scary for every single one of those people and every person I know who's successful. So don't wait till it's not scary, because that's not going to happen. Just believe in yourself enough and your dream enough, whether no one else on the planet believes it or not.
Exactly.
Make that your motivation. Turn that into your hustle.
And I think also when you do have a job, you're kind of like, well, money is coming in, and you're sort of like not as motivated to really ramp it up, because you've got a cushion. It's all good. I'm still able to pay all the bills. And if you got rid of that and you focus 100%, like balls to the wall, like, I need to bring in money. I need to, whatever it takes.
It's night and day, the difference.
Yeah.
Night and day. And it's a scenario you can't try and replicate. You know what I mean? Like, for anyone who's never done this or never taken that leap, you might say, oh, I am working. I am giving my passion 200%. Yeah, I have a job that pays the bills, but you're not. I'm sorry, you're not. It's just, once you have that fire under your butt where you're like, oh, the mortgage might not get paid next month, period, end of story. It may not get paid. Like, okay, that means I have to do X, Y, and Z. So guess what? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z till I can get the mortgage, Right. So it's just something you can't know until you're in it. But the success is also so much bigger and better than it would have been too. So just do it. That's what I say. Just do it. I wish I had done it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true. Okay. So, all right. So we talked about a couple of these, and tell us a little bit about the dream boards that you help women create.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I call them future boards, and this is kind of the board that I initially took to work back in the day. I have like 6 of them now, 6 or 7 of them now. And I actually just this week moved into an office, which is very exciting, in downtown. So that's something that was one of my goals for a very long time. I've had to work at home, with young kids. Now they're old enough and stuff. So, And I did the same thing that I had always done when I had ever worked in an office, which is take my boards with me and surround myself in my working space with all of my dreams so that as I'm working, I know what I'm working for. And to me, I call them future boards because those boards are visual representation of what my future life is going to look and feel like. And that might sound cocky, but guess what? I've proven it so much that it's just a fact. It just really is. I mean, I literally, you can go follow me on Pinterest and you'll see 50 side-by-side photos of what used to be on my board and me living that moment or my kids living that moment. And it's just undeniable at this point. It's crazy. So I always, coach people to make a board that makes them feel very uncomfortable. And let me just tell you, as I was setting up my office has like all glass walls and it's I'm at a WeWork station, so it's a communal station or whatever. It's a private office, but in, community. And it makes you feel uncomfortable. I'm not even gonna lie. I've been doing this for 6-7 years and consider myself to pretty much, have done everything when it comes to vision boards, but it's uncomfortable. You put your dreams up on a wall where strangers or people can see it and you feel like you're a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are so scared of that, they won't do it or they won't put it up once they've done it. And if you work with me and I coach you, you're not going to get away with that. And because I know, you know what I mean? Everything I coach is stuff that I live on a daily basis. I've been through it. I'm going through it. I'm proving it the same way, anybody who's either reading the book or being coached is. So now I do a lot of those. I've done them for Nike. I have a big one coming up for all the Pinterest employees this month. And so I teach them to corporate. I teach them to women's conferences or events. Guys do them. So
nice.
If you have any guy listeners out there, you can do them too. But yeah, and I give the entire recipe and how to do that in step 5 of the book. And then I have a new book coming out next year, and it's called Manifesting Gangsta. And it's all specifically about how to make a vision board that will make your dreams come to life. Yeah.
Share with us a few things that are on your board right now.
Oh my gosh. So I have a couple different boards. I have one that is like work focused, I have one that's future home focused, a travel one, and then I have my core one, which is the one that I teach people how to do that represents all aspects of your life. So it has all 5 categories of your life represented on it. The one that is kind of like newer or really charges me up right now is the career one. So I have, one of my big goals and dreams. And trust me, every time you say your dreams out loud, especially for the first time, it feels really uncomfortable. So here you go. This is an exclusive. I'm saying this the first time ever on a podcast.
Okay.
So a little uncomfortable, but hey. So part of my dreams is to, I want a show. I want a talk show or a positive reality show. And so I have that depicted on my board. I definitely want to do stadium speaking events and create those to inspire women especially, but people everywhere, and do a lot of retreats. So kind of those are all represented in various ways on my board. And those are the dreams right now that are really pushing me. Those are, it's what started out as a microphone on my board in 2010 has now turned into an entire board of like stadium images. So, it takes a while though. That's what, been 7 years or something. So it takes a while for us to dream big, and don't beat yourself up if your version of big 5 years from now is going to seem microscopic, because that means you're doing it right.
Right.
You're pushing yourself at each stage. So
it's so interesting when you say that when people come into the room, because I created a vision board last year, and it's hanging up on my wall in my living room, and stating this guy, and he was over, and I was actually in the midst of just finishing up recording a podcast, and he was sitting on my couch, and we brought up about the vision board, and I said, "Oh yeah, I have one right now in my living room." And so I don't think that the guy that I was dating knew what that was.
Right.
So he started looking at it, and it's got images, but also has a lot of words, symbolic words for me. And well, one of them says millionaire, another one says give in really big letters, and
Yeah.
also like love and relationship and adventure and travel. And like a few days later, he was like, we have very different goals in our life.
Wow, what a good way to vet, right?
Oh my
That's
God.
when
Really?
I should just send him my vision board. Is this where you want to go? Because if it's not, check, bye.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, we may want the same things like in a relationship, but we have very different goals.
Wow.
And I thought, how what?
How eye-opening.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
thought, okay, then he didn't seem to
That worked.
he didn't really talk to me about any big vision. I had just come back from 10X, this
Right.
huge conference on like growth and wealth and all expansion, and so I was on pumped beyond. And so
Right.
and it reflects, what's on my vision board. And I guess it was, I don't know, maybe a little too much for him. He definitely didn't have.
He was like, whoa, I had no idea what I was getting into.
Yeah. You know what though? This was like I had to take a few steps back because I was like, wow, okay, my ego has just been hurt a little bit like this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't believe that even if we were to continue, that he'd be able to actually physically hold the space that
Right.
do you know what I mean?
Yep, exactly. That's where I'm at. If I met somebody who took a look at my board and was like, whoa, I would be like, okay, well, it was really nice to know you. Have a great life. Because if you think I'm going to choose between this and you, it's never going to happen.
Right, exactly. Like there's no mediocre. There's no mediocre anywhere here. This is like you either join me on this ride or, we envision together is what I
And the truth is, we are a representation of the people that we surround ourselves with. And so for me, I mean, it is so critical that the people that are in my life are people who are probably more driven and dedicated than me. I mean, that's my goal. They're people that I look up to, that I, think, oh my gosh, I can't imagine, being at that level. That's what from day one of recreating my life, thank God, realized, is I want to surround myself with people who are inspiring me and motivating me, even if it's a conversation we're not having on a regular basis. You don't necessarily have to talk about it all the time, but someone who is on a path and is going somewhere. And I got to tell you, after several years of doing this, I couldn't even relate to someone who wasn't. And that might sound terrible. If it does, I own that. But I can't.
It doesn't.
I mean, I can't even like have a conversation with you if you have no goals and have nothing you want to do with your life, don't want to better your life, don't want to travel, no. Like I just don't have time for it.
No,
I don't want this.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So it was that was completely orchestrated because I never do a podcast and have someone come over in the middle, like as I'm just finishing up. Like I would never do that. My podcast days are sort of sacred. They're free. I don't do anything else typically. And so I certainly would never have had him come over. But, and the fact that he was here on a day I was doing that, finishing up, but then we were talking about the vision board and that whole thing, like it was almost like, okay, this guy is just not the one guy. So you need to, it's going to dissolve.
Totally the universe saving you from future heartache.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
So I wanted to share that story, but
I love it. And I love that you have your board in your living room. I put mine, when we moved to Seattle, I had mine framed in this beautiful, gorgeous frame. And instead of a TV above my fireplace, that my vision board was there in this beautiful frame, like the size of a TV above my fireplace.
Right. One thing about what you were writing in your book that inspired me is that, so my vision board And I actually didn't go step by step with how you created yours. I sort of went into magazines, got sort of like the feel, the vibe, pictures that really drew me, and I put them on. I'm like, this is the life that I want. But
Uh,
what I didn't do, and I love that you did this, is that you would put things like like I would love like a new bag and wallet, like something as
right.
simple as that, but a
Yep.
really nice one that's going to be
Yep.
probably
One
more
that's
than
gonna
a,
make you feel like a little princess.
yeah. And so I don't have that on my vision board right now, but you've inspired me to like, why not? Why not, find the one that you want
Exactly.
and put
The
it.
ultimate, the ultimate one, the one that you would probably right now, never go by. You need that one on your board, and
That's what I
that's the
need. Yeah.
that's the truth, guys. I'm telling you, like back when I was, still barely making it paycheck to paycheck, I put a picture of a Louis Vuitton bag on my board. That was the first one I put up, and because so I really teach people not to say it's not about money to me. So it's not about like, oh, I have stacks of bills on my board and that means someday I want to be rich. I really want to press you and say, well, what does being rich mean to you? Like, why would you give a shit? Once you have all your bills paid, then what? Like, are you going to
Right.
travel? Are you going to, do things with your kids that you wouldn't normally do? Are you going to go have girlfriends weekends you couldn't have now? Like, what? Why? And until you know really what that is, you're never going to be motivated to ever get rich, because you have to have something that matters enough to you that you really want to put in the work. And for me, it's all these dreams and goals I have around my kids. And every day there's a clock ticking on how much time I have with my kids before they go off to college. And so that is my fire burning motivation. So, if I want to have a trip on there, that to me is way more important than if you just handed me a check, honest to God. Like if someone said all expenses paid, trip around the world or whatever check, I'd be like, I'm on that jet, like,
Right.
because that's what it means to me, like money means that to me. I've defined in different ways. So I really won't let my clients cheat by putting, anything like that. I want them to define what wealth looks like. So one of the ways that I define what wealth looks like was to do things like, put a bag that, I wouldn't go out and buy right now, but I would if I was wealthy. So that's how it represents to me, or, flying on a private jet or being on a yacht or whatever, like these things that's what wealth actually looks like in real life. And until you can start to imagine yourself or envision yourself in a life where you would be on a yacht or you would be doing whatever, not everyone's dream's the same, obviously, but whatever your version of that is, then you're not going to ever draw it to you. And the
Exactly.
other thing that I really talk about is that most of the things that I've manifested have never cost me anything. And I'm talking crazy manifestations, crazy, like courtside seats to NBA games, like
I
flying
know.
on a
I
private
read
jet.
about that.
Yeah, crazy stuff that all of them never cost me a single penny. Like I didn't even pay for them. And it's not because I'm somebody, special. This is back when I was literally, I'm still, whatever. I was just a normal, regular person working a regular job, raising three kids.
Right. Right.
Like I didn't even have a blog, I didn't have followers, I didn't have none of that. So it is proof to me that if somebody can live that type of life when you're still working your way up, I was like at the bottom of the sales rack as far as like corporate sales when I started, and, making like 40 grand a year with a family of four. So I definitely wasn't rolling in it,
Right.
but I was, starting to go on all expense vacations and, manifested my first Louis Vuitton bag a couple years later. And just literally everything that was on my board has just come to life, has shown
So
up in my life.
amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it works. It works.
It really works. It's undeniable. Like go look at my blog post from back then, go on, Pinterest, go on YouTube, and you'll see all of it happening in real time. Like, cause that's been my thing from day one. I kind of started out as a skeptic going, please. But I also thought, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe one or two things come true. Well, cool. That's a risk I'm willing to take. And so that was kind of the attitude I started with. And then I thought, well, for good or for bad, I'm going to record this. I want this documented. I don't want anyone to be able to say, oh, you made that up. And so from day one, I've put pictures of my boards up as soon as they're done, and then pictures of us living the moments. So it's all been in real time.
Do you get all the images from magazines, or do you find them online and then print them out in color, or both?
I actually don't get any from magazines. So I teach people how to find the perfect image. I use Pinterest because I think they just have the most gorgeous library of
True.
stunning pictures.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff on there, but if whatever you search for, follow it with the word photography, it'll filter out all the garbage and you'll just get images. And so for me, the right image is everything, because the right image is going to elicit in you almost a butterfly reaction instantly. So you can be, let's say your dream is to go to Paris and you haven't really thought about it beyond that. You're just like, oh, I could see myself at the Eiffel Tower or whatever. But if I push you, you'll eventually be like, no, I think I would want my kids there with me, or I would want my whoever partner with me. And what I really see is I see us drinking champagne at a little cafe, and we're looking at the Eiffel Tower, or we're waking up in this gorgeous hotel room and we're looking at that Eiffel Tower, right? So the more I get you to get specific, the more that dream has a chance of manifesting. And so then when we look for the picture on Pinterest, you will look until you see that exact picture. And you'll be like, oh my God, that's me waking up in that bed, looking at the Eiffel, drinking coffee in bed. Right. And then you have, because manifesting is about feeling, right? Because that's what you're drawing into your life. And so once you see that and you're like, that's me. And then the cool thing about it is when it does manifest, you can literally retake that exact same picture, which is what I've done for 7 years. Like my pictures are literally side-by-side comparisons. It's crazy.
Wow. Crazy. And can you print from, this is a dumb question, can you just print those images from Pinterest?
So you can save them. You just like right click or whatever, or I think they allow you to download them too. And I just save them or copy them and put them into a Word document, and then you can drag them big or small. And so I'll put like maybe 3 to a page on a Word document, so that it's cheaper to print in color. And all of my boards are printed that way. So maybe they're, the printer quality isn't as shiny but trust me, having the right picture is
by far.
I mean, my boards usually manifest in about 18 months, and most of my clients do too. Oh, so wow. It's crazy. It's crazy. I would say 90% of my clients, as long as they've followed and done the work and done what they're supposed to do, they've had a third to a half of their board show up in the first year to 18 months. It's crazy.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna actually add to my. I'm gonna add to mine, and I may create just a separate one altogether.
Yeah, there you go. And I update mine too about once a year. Usually in January, I'll kind of look at it and be like, oh, what's the next version of that dream? Because a dream that scared you January a year ago, after you've been looking at it for a year on your board, doesn't scare you anymore the same way. Right. It starts to seem like, yeah, I'll do that at some point. That's not. So then you really have to sit down and be like, okay, well, what's the next version? And is this even still what I want? And that's a question I think everyone should really ask themselves on a regular basis. Yeah. Is this still what I want? Cool. Does it still look like this? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the more you define it, the more chance you have it of coming to life.
Oh, so good. So good. So we're coming down to the end of our interview. Was there any last, Well, let me ask you this. How can people find you, and where are you, and speaking and things like that?
And you can learn everything and way more than you want to know about me at sarahcentrella.com. And Sarah is with an H, and Centrella is CENTRELLA.com. It has the links to all my social media. So you'll find me on all social media as Sarah Centrella as well. And then, I have my vision board workshops on there and coaching. And I also have a coaching blog. So, feel free to subscribe and you'll get, updates on tips. One question people have been asking me a ton lately is, how do you protect your dream when either your partner or your family or your closest friends don't support you? So I just put up a post about that
That's good.
there. So, yeah. And I'll put your this podcast up there too. So yeah, you'll find a lot. And also my story is on there too. So,
and you're also going to be at Relentless, because I'm going to be attending that in July in California.
Yeah. Yes, I have a bunch. Be sure to check out the events page. I have a ton of events coming up all over. So I have some in Colorado. The kids and I are going to London, Scotland, and Ireland next month. We have a bunch coming up in LA. So yeah, check it out. And then I have a big, my second annual women's empowerment dinner, which is my big kind of shindig that I do, is here in Portland, and that is on May 25th. I have tons of people coming from all over the country for that. So you can get tickets and learn more on the events page there too on my website.
Nice. Do you only do it in Portland, or do you do it in other places?
That specific one I've just done in Portland, but I'm going to start hopefully doing similar, probably not as big as I do this one. And I'd like to do one in LA and New York, hopefully maybe in the fall. But my events, my quote motivational events, I really want them to be super different than what you can currently find out there. So they're not your traditional like conference. They're a 5-course chef prepared dinner, full bar.
Love it.
Make together. We have a red carpet. We have photographers. We have swag bags. Like, you know,
very cool.
I want the girls to feel like, you know, it's a special night. So we put our high heels on, you know.
Yeah, well, if you decide you want to do it in New York, I can definitely help you find a location and stuff.
Yes, so I do really want to do one in New York, so we'll have to sneak up.
For sure. Well, any last minute, any last bits, anything that you want to share with the audience before we go?
Yeah, I would just say, listen, whatever your dream is, and I don't care if it seems crazy to you or if it, you know, it's something you've been working on such a long time that you feel strongly or passionately about. If you just don't quit, like the formula is really freaking simple when it comes down to it. It's you can either throw in the towel or you can keep going. And if you keep going, there's so much evidence to prove that you're going to come out victorious in the end. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be tested a bunch, but no matter what it is that you are after, you're going to live it. You just have to make that absolute concrete decision that you are all in. And once you're all in, you're going to start living it. And that to me is like the most exciting thing that I live every day.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for spending the time today. I just blown away by your book and just the things that you have created in your life, despite everything that's happened. And you've just come out on top. And I just love that you're on stage, you're speaking, you're spreading your word and your message to all of us. And I am a true proponent for women supporting each other and empowering each other. And so thank you for, you know, being that person. And hopefully our paths will cross. Well, I'll see you at Relentless.
Yeah. And thank you for giving women, you know, a voice and a platform like this to be able to connect and learn from each other. And I hope that, you know, your listeners got something that is impactful, empowering, but I get that from your podcast all the time. So thank you for putting that out there for all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for listening this week. I hope you loved and so enjoyed this conversation between Sarah and I about her book and how you can manifest as long as you are hustling, you are believing it, and so you can then receive it. To find out more about Sarah and for all the show notes, head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 73. And if you haven't caught me on Instagram, head on over there at Margaret Romero. And if you have been loving the shows, head on over to iTunes and leave a review. Thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate you wherever you are in the world. Much love, big hugs, and we'll speak to you all next week. Bye for now.